Students, welcome for the next session. And in this session, we are going to study is the next part of breathing and exchange of gases. And the part that we are going to study is respiratory volume and capacities of lung. What we are going to study is respiratory volumes and capacities of lungs. In previous lecture, we have studied these three capacities, and let me just highlight about it. This is the tidal volume. In short, it is called as TV, tidal volume. So, one of the capacity of the lung, that is 500 ml of air, can be inhaled or exhaled by a fully grown adult for single inhalation or exhalation. Single inhalation or single inhalation, the air that can be inhaled inside the lungs or exhaled out of the lungs is 500 ml. And a fully grown adult on an average breathe means inhale or exhale, the amount of air is 6000 to 8000 ml per minute. In a single minute, the adult person can inhale or exhale 6000 to 8000 ml air in a 1 minute. So that is called as tidal volume, also called as PV in short. Then the next is inspiratory reserve volume. In short, it is called as IRV. And what is this capacity? It is a forceful inspiration. So when a fully grown adult forceful inspires the air. Inspiration means inhalation of the air. So when an adult forceful inspires or inhales the air inside the lung, so the amount of that air can be measured is 2500 ml to 3000 ml in a lung. So this much amount of air can be accommodated in forceful inspiration of the air into the lungs of adult human. Third capacity is expiratory reserve volume, that is ERV. And this capacity is what? It is forceful expiration, means when a same adult forcefully expires the air outside the lungs or forcefully exhales the air outside the lungs, then the volume of the air is measured is 1000 to 1100 ml is the amount of air that can be exhaled out of the lungs. Next capacity is residual volume. What is this residual volume? The volume of air remains in a lungs after forceful expiration. In short, it is called as our residual volume. So when adult person forceful inspires, so expires the air out of the lungs, then still some amount of air remains inside the lung is called as residual volume. Let me repeat. Residual volume, any adult person when forceful expires the air or exhales the air outside the lungs, still the little amount of air remains inside the lung. That air or the amount of that air is called as residual volume. In short, it is called as RV. Then next is IC, inspiratory capacity. So what is inspiratory capacity? The volume of air which is inspired after total expiration. Hence, when complete expiration is done, complete exhalation is done, then the amount of air is inhaled. Normal amount of air is inhaled It's called as inspiratory capacity, shortly is termed as IC, and it is the combination of TV and IRV, tidal volume. So for single inhalation it is 500 ml, and IRV it is 2500 to 3000 ml. So this plus this is what is a IC, inspiratory capacity. So tidal volume, that is 500 ml, plus the inspiratory reservoir volume, that is 2500 to 3000 ml. This plus this is IC, inspiratory capacity of the lung. Next is the EC, expiratory capacity, which is opposite of inspiratory capacity. Volume of air is expired after normal inspiration. After normal inspiration, whatever the air is expired out at normal state of breathing, then the process is called as EC, expiratory capacity. It is a combination of tidal volume plus ERV. So it is tidal volume 500 ml plus expiratory reserve volume is what, 1000 to 1100 ml. That is the expiratory capacity, EC. Next capacity that we are going to study is functional residual capacity, FRC. Shortly it is termed as FRC, functional residual capacity. What it is all about volume of air remain after normal expiration in the lung. When normally air is expired out of the lung, still there is an amount of air which is present inside the lung. That normal amount of air is called as FRC, functional residual capacity. FRC. Let me repeat. After the normal expiration, the air remains still inside the lung. Little amount of air is called as functional residual capacity, FRC. Okay, and it is a combination of ERV, TV, and IRV. Expiratory reserve volume, inspiratory reserve volume plus tidal volume, which forms the functional residual capacity. Next is vital capacity. So, what is vital capacity? Maximum air can be inhaled after forced expiration. When forceful expiration is done, what I'm saying, when forceful expiration is done, then after that maximum air is inhaled inside the lungs is nothing but the vital capacity of the lung, and this vital capacity is the combination of ERV, TV, and RV. Okay, so it is all about the same for functional residual capacity and the vital capacity. So this is the one process for inhalation. Same thing can be applicable for exhalation. So maximum air can be exhaled after a normal inspiration is also called as ERV, TV, IRV combination. So that is vital capacity of the lung. And the last capacity is a total lung capacity, and this total lung capacity of the lung is volume of air accommodated in the lung at the end of forceful inspiration. When air is forcefully inspired inside the lungs, and at the end of that forceful inspiration, whatever the air, volume of air present inside the lung is nothing but the total lung capacity. And finally, here we have completed all the respiratory volume and capacities of lung in human. So if you have doubt regarding the capacities, you can ask it on the group, WhatsApp group. They are very simple, just make them simple by their short forms and their volumes, and the process involved, it is either it is a inhalation or exhalation. Okay, so you have to consider that. You can understand this very easily. Then next point that we are going to study is exchange of gases. Yes. So till now we have studied that exchange of gases can occur in between the environment and the lungs. Outside environment and the lung. So outside air in the environment that is inhaled inside the lungs, and whatever the carbon dioxide we have produced in the metabolism, that is exhaled out of the body. So this exchange we have studied. Then another exchange of gases that occurs in between blood and the tissue. In between blood and tissue. Yes. So for this exchange, there is a very specific process involved. Uh, that is partial pressure. What is partial pressure? Partial pressure means the differences in the air inside the blood and the tissue, or simply we can say inside the cell. So if there is an imbalance in the O2 and CO2 concentration, O2 is oxygen and CO2, yes, O2 and CO2, imbalance in the concentrations of O2 and CO2 in the blood and in the tissue, as well as in the lungs and in the outside environment, then partial pressure helps in the inhalation and exhalation. So how it is possible? Let me explain that. So the thing which is very crucial over here is PCO2 and PO2, partial pressure of carbon dioxide and partial pressure of oxygen. Now when oxygen is carried to the tissue, oxygen is carried to the tissue. Let me draw it over here. O2 is carried to the cell. This is a cell. So O2 is carried to the cell, and cell, inside the cell, CO2 is produced. After the biochemical processes, this cell has produced the CO2 inside the cell, and O2 is in the blood. So in the blood there is a high concentration of oxygen and very less concentration of CO2. So here we have to consider that totally CO2 is absent. Here about 99% the CO2 is absent in the blood and oxygen is present in the blood, and on the other side in the cell CO2 is present 100% and oxygen is not present at all. So this is the imbalance of O2 and CO2 in the blood and O2 and CO2 in the cell. So inside the cell there is a less O2 concentration, so O2 moves inside the cell and CO2 is high in concentration inside in the cell, so it moves in the blood. So they exchange their places. Okay, so that is called as partial pressure of the air. Also in the case of breathing, lungs and the atmosphere, so when inside the lungs, if the partial pressure of the oxygen is less, or partial pressure of the air than the atmosphere is less, so what will happen? The outside air has the more pressure. So that air will move inside the lungs, and when there is a increased partial pressure inside the lungs, slightly more than the atmospheric pressure, so that air moves outside the lungs in the environment. So in this way, there is an exchange of gases in between the lungs and the atmosphere, as well as blood and the tissue. So that is nothing but the partial pressure. Simply saying, in a mixture of gases, the pressure applied by the amount of gas present in the mixture is called as a partial pressure. And with the help of this partial pressure, the exchange of gases can occur very easily. Yes. So in this way, exchange of gases can occur in the lungs and the atmosphere, as well as blood and the tissue. So it takes place, it starts from the lungs. From lungs it comes to the alveoli. From alveoli it comes into the blood. From blood it goes to the tissue, and from tissue it comes back to the same way or same pathway to the alveoli. Then carbon dioxide comes into the lungs, and then it is exhaled out. This is the pathway of inhalation and exhalation. Inhalation and exhalation. Students, the part of exchange of gases and the volume and capacities of respiratory system we have completed over here. The image related to this I'll show you in the slides, and the notes related to this I'll provide you by the email. And now what you have to do, the homework is that learn all the respiratory volume capacities and prepare a note on exchange of gases, just in your own language. And you can also take a support or the help of notes that I'm going to provide. Thank you very much.